they were terrible at the time, I wouldn't trade any of that for anything. I would never want to trade that, because everything that happened helped form me into the person I am today. And we'll talk about it. The teams helped channel that into good.
So at what point did you hear about the teams?
So I was 16 years old, and I would say being lost was probably a good description of how I felt up until that time. And I was doing like a martial arts thing with my buddies, and I was mostly just doing because a couple of my buddies, Ryan Callums and Keith Blum, were big into martial arts, and I wanted just to hang out. And my buddy Keith told me with passion I've never seen before about the SEAL teams, about a Navy SEAL. And this is like 1999 or 2000. This is like no one knew what a SEAL was. This is pre 9/11. I had never heard what a SEAL was. And he told me with this passion about that quiet professional, that warrior that does these hard things that no one else wants to do and never seeks recognition for those actions. And there was something about that creed that drew me in a way I've never felt before. It called for me. And, so I went home and went on my 56K modem and read everything I could about what it was a SEAL is. And I read a book that was pretty formative for me. It was The Men with Green Faces by Gene Wentz. And my decision was made. I'm like, this is what I'm going to do. And a week after discovering what it was, I told my mom, I'm going to be a Navy SEAL.
And she had no idea what it was. You had to explain it to her, I assume?
I mean, she didn't know what it was. She just knew it was being a warrior, some type of soldier, an operator, and it was the last thing she wanted to hear from me.
Did you get drawn to it? I mean, imagine like you're saying that your whole life you felt scared and you felt weak and scared of your dad. Did you think, hey, if I do this, it's gonna allow me, give me the capability to protect people, including
Absolutely.
My mom?
Absolutely. That is completely on point. When people ask me why I wanted to be a SEAL, it's so easy to come up with the superficial reasons. Like, yeah, I wanted to get paid to blow up stuff and jump out of planes and serve my country and shoot guns. But those are all fake, superficial reasons. Those are absolute pluses, but that is not why I wanted to be a team guy. I wanted to be a team guy for what you said. I wanted to transform my life. I wanted to learn the skills, to develop the strength, to become a different person, to find my identity, be someone that could protect the people that I loved that couldn't protect themselves. And now that I have more awareness of human psychology and the experiences in our environment and how it shapes us into the people we become and the decisions we make, I realized that it was completely born out of my situation with my father and wanting to protect my brother and my mother, and that extending to really all people. I thought, this is nice, it just goes to show how little we know when we are young. I thought that being a SEAL would solve all of my life's problems. And it gave clarity and focus to so many, but it probably created just as many more. But it gave me tools to deal with those problems. But it was a pretty naive thought. And I even said it to my mother. I said, being a SEAL will solve all of life's problems.
So you're in high school. Are you doing sports or anything like that?
Yeah, so I was a big swimmer. I played water polo. And after I found out what it was to be a team guy, I did all my research. And Stu Smith, who I recently learned is in the world of kind of like making fitness Navy SEAL guidelines and workout plans. I found his book, which is maybe like the first edition or second. It might be a later edition now, and like did all those workouts, and then did it twice through, and just tried to push myself every day after school. I went to Santa Monica High School, so the beach was 3 blocks away. So always doing swims and runs and a lot of calisthenics, a lot of push-ups.
Was your what about school? Were you paying attention in school? Were you academically focused?
I was. I felt like I was going through the motions of school, and I did pretty well. I always got straight A's. I did pretty well. But I knew college was not for me. I was lost. I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school, but I knew it wasn't college. And so when I heard about the teams, that calling, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And it's to date, it is the strongest calling I've had.
Yeah, I have conversations with people a lot, and man, that idea that you should go to college right after you get done with high school, I don't know if that's the best idea for everyone. I mean, for some people it works. I get it. But you're a classic example. I'm a classic example. I mean, when I ended up going to college later, hey, it was fine. You're disciplined. You're focused. You can get stuff done. But, yeah, coming out of high school, I would have been just,
the focus is
ineffective.
Not there. Yeah, you're not there for the right reasons. I think everything you do in life should be for the right reasons. And going to school after high school because that's what your parents told you to do, and you think that's like the next default. It may work for some people. I don't think it's necessarily the right decision for a lot of people. Like you said, we're both prime examples of that. I think we both went to undergrad in our later years of life. I was like 26 or 27 when I went to undergrad.
Were you worried about when you went in the Navy that you weren't going to be around your mom, you weren't going to be around your little brother? Were you worried about them with your dad?
I would have been, but my father actually passed away before I joined the Navy, so I didn't have that worry.
What age was that? Like, how old were you?
I just turned 18, so it was.
So it was close.
Yeah, it was close. February 21st, 2002.
And was that? I mean, that had to be a weird feeling of this guy that had been abusive to you, your brother, your mom, but he's still your dad. I mean, how did you wash out those feelings?
Oh, it's a complex question. And just I want to be clear. Like, I have no ill feelings against my father, and I have forgiven him of the years of abuse that he gave. And when I grew a little bit older and I understood where he came from, he also came from a pretty terrible home situation. And I think his demons, he just didn't have the tools or the aptitude, the mental strength to deal with those demons. And like a lot of people, they pass those on, right? The sins of our father pass on to us. And I don't fault him. And with the abuse, most of it was directed at my mother, verbal and the physical abuse. I mean, it was not as direct with us. I mean, certainly there was, the belts to the feet. And I remember always kind of being scared to go to sleep sometimes because, there were times where being woken up with a cold glass of water to the face was what would happen, or being woken up and being asked which of my possessions I had to choose what he would break in front of me. And I understand a lot of that was just to hurt my mother, and he did a good job of doing that. And so he saw that hurting his children was the best way to actually hurt his mother, because my mother was and is a very strong woman, and so physically or verbally abusing her to a point, it was like, well, just bring it. It's not, but hurt my children, it's going to crush me, When my father died, I feel like it was the day I was reborn into someone else. And I would probably have to backtrack and tell you the context of why I feel that way. Towards the later years of high school, my mother had enough of the life she had been experiencing, and she would have left my father long ago. But it was really us, myself, and my brother Jeff, that she couldn't leave behind to my father, and there's no way my father would have let her leave with us. That was not going to happen. So, but there was a time where she just couldn't be in the same household. So for months at a time, she had worked it where that she would actually sleep at a friend's house or go away. So at nighttime when my father came back, the food, like my mother would prepare dinner and food, but she would be somewhere else. And this arrangement was going on, and I think my father, obviously not very happy with the situation, thought it would go back to normal, because there had been periods of time where my mother would leave for a little bit, but always came back, because like a lot of abusive relationships, it's hard to leave that, right? And especially when the abuser promises they'll change and may change temporarily, but then goes back to their ways. It's a classic story. But this time was a little bit different, and I think my father knew that this time was different and was getting frustrated. And I think seeing that there were little options left, and I think maybe he felt cornered. And I think cornered animals can be dangerous. Can be very dangerous. Not that I think he was cornered, but I think he felt that way. So on this particular day, I think it was February 21st, 2002, I was home with my mother, and it was during the day, and my father came home, and he was supposed to be at work, so I think it was a little surprising. And I remember when he came home, I could smell the whiskey on his breath, so I knew he was very intoxicated. And it was just, I could feel something was different this time. There was a tension, and I knew I had to stick around. And my mother was surprised and scared to see him there. And they went in the kitchen, and I stuck close by on the couch in the living room. And I remember my father came up to me, and some of the last words he said to me was, "I'm sorry, Jonathan." And he pepper sprayed my face. And then all I hear in the kitchen is my mother screaming for help and saying, "He's got a gun." So I then, fight or flight, you do what you need to do to protect the people you love. So I got up and I did my best to fight him and get that gun. And fought as hard as I could, as strong as I guess a 140-pound-year-old kid could do at the time. But I lost that fight. I still have a scar right around here from when my father was able to get a hold of a dumbbell nearby and smash my head in with it. And I think they kind of turned the fight, and he was able to get his gun out of his pocket. He shot it in the air, and it was, that was the first time in my life that I faced a life or death situation. And as you and I know, there were many more to come later, but for different reasons. But this was my first taste of it. And I don't know how, maybe by the grace of God or something that I said. I remember clearly pleading with him that we loved him and that he didn't have to do this, and that it wasn't. I clearly remember saying that it's not too late. Like this, you have the power to decide right now. It's not too late. And I think maybe clarity or grace, in a moment of clarity that my father found, he decided not to shoot us, not to kill us. And I told